around 2012, and since from them I was continuing this platform itself. So currently, I'm working in one of the banking vertical in European bank. Its name is Rabobank, and I'm handling the corporate and retail banking, as well as the mortgage loan. So yeah, so this is, and apart from that, I was after COVID, I taking the assignment for the banking vertical. Prior to that, I was more engaged with the utility verticals. That means oil and gas vertical. I worked almost 10 years, a decade. Worked with multiple US client, UK client, and I started my career with very basic programming languages. Is C sharp initially, a Java, and then I moved to the BI world, where I engage with the Microsoft BI, MSBI, with the SQL Server analysis services. Then SSRS is one of the reporting tool, and then there's an ETL tool which is introduced with Microsoft called SSIS Integration Services. Working with in on-premises. Then I upgrade my skill, work on some other ETL tool, Informatica, as well as some Talent is one of the is still using Talent as well. And sometime I use Alteryx Data Factory. So this is something as per the requirement, I just move on. So this is a little bit brief about myself. Related to the course content, in today's session, we are going to cover on the initially section. Right? Let me share my screen. How to share the screen in Zoho? Full screen, picture in pictures, meeting detail. I don't know. This is the first time I'm using this one. How to share the screen? Where is the option? Okay, now I got it.
Just need to mute and yeah.
Share the screen. Let me know if you're able to see my screen.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So this is the course content. I got what it is. Yeah, so this is the course content. I'm so the first topic is data warehousing concept. So we will start with the data warehousing concept with the introduction of the BI. And we will see today's session. I'm not going to take a full 2 hours. It should be short for 1 or 1.5, right? But from the there are not, it should be continue with the full 2 hour session, because I have just recently moved my house, and so I was a little bit tired. Yeah, so let us start. So first topic for our discussion is what is business intelligence, right? And why we need business intelligence. In a layman term, right? So let me. So before that, I'm just preparing it. So we will see the today agenda for the discussion is what is BI. That is, BI is nothing but a business intelligence. What is the need for the BI, right? And what BI can help to the industry, right? And what is the data warehousing? How data warehousing, relate with the BI, and we see some of the features of the data warehousing and the component what are they using. And from later, right, when we move to the snaps, I don't know snaps, then we can see that MPP architecture, the architecture of the data warehousing. So today's session is, let us start with the very basic, what is BI and what is the need of BI, right? So if I see, in a layman term, so BI is referred to the technology, or I can say the application and practices for the collection and the integration and analysis and present for the business information. So the goal of the BI is to support the business decision making. So basically, how BI work? If you think like a GPS system, so what GPS will be do? GPS system will be to collect that data from the satellite, right? And map out the train and provide you the accurate positioning. So what BI is do? BI gather the various sources. So sources over here, it could be your a database, it could be your spreadsheet or CSV file, or it could be your cloud services, to create a comprehensive view of your business environment. So this is the first part of the BI, that is the data collection, right? So how it collect that data? It gather the data from the various sources. So let me give you the example. How, if I can say in a layman term, let's suppose you have a small bakery shop, right? So you bake and sell different kinds of breads, cakes, and pastries. And how BI can help you to run your bakery better? The first, you collect the data from the various sources. The first is your sales data, right? How many item you sell each day. Then also your data collection should be, customer feedback is also your data collection. That means what customers say about your products that you are selling. Then you have an inventory data, right? How much the flour or the sugar or the other ingredient you have. And also the weather data, that means how the weather affect your sales. The second part is come to your data integration. And data integration means putting it all together, right? So you put all your data together in a one place. That means first you need to collect that data, then you need to store the data. So the second part, so you put all this data together into a one place. It's like a big notebook. This basically help you, the big picture of your bakery is doing, right? You store the data. Then the third part of any business intelligence is your analysis. So what you can do, finding the patterns. Like you look, so what we are doing over here, so we look at the data to find the patterns and the trends. So for example, if I see the sales trend, we notice that your sales more cake on the week, on the weekends. Or if I say the customer preference, customer love to have your chocolates, clip, cookies the most. And the inventory. So inventory, we can use more flour in winter because bakes it bake more bread. So that means we need to predict some kind of analysis with these data. And finally, the fourth part is that it is the consume. or you can also say making it too easy to understand, or the visualizes, whether you can visualize the report. That means we can create a very simple chart and graph to show that data. For example, a bar chart, right? A bar chart showing the number of cake sold each day. A pie chart which showing the product the most popular. And sometimes the real time updates are staying up to date, meaning that you get the real time updates on your sales and inventory. If you see you are running a low on the floor, so you can order more before you run out. And finally, the most important for any business, to make a smart decision, right? Based on that data, you can take your a smart decision. Like a stock up is one. You order more ingredients for the weekend because you know the sales will be higher. And then you can also run some special promotion on chocolates clip cookies because they are more popular. And also the introduce the new product, the type, because the customer asking for more. So what it helped in the BI world, it is better for planning. You know exactly how much to bake each day. Your customer will be a happier. You also save the some amount of money, and it will also increase the your sales. So meaning that if you can compare these things to the real world, so how it work in BI. Let's say for example, I will give another example. Amazon warehouse, how Amazon warehouse is operation. So Amazon warehouse, that the fulfillment of the center are highly automated and data driven environment. So they handle the entire process from receiving product to shipping them to the customer. So what first of all we did, so Amazon collect the vast amount of data from the various sources, including your inventory label, including your order detail, your shipping information, and the customer preference. And this data is gathered through a sensor, a scanner, and software system integrated throughout the warehouse. Then what it did, Amazon, the combining the information, that means a data integration over here they are doing. So all this data is integrated into a centralized system. So Amazon use tools like Amazon Redshift, a fully managed data warehouse services. Microsoft use Snaps Analytics, or you can also say the SQL dedicated pool. Earlier, it was named as a SQL data warehouse. And you also heard about the Snowflake is one of the very latest data warehouse tool that across the industry has using. And Amazon has a Redshift. So these are the three hot skill tool that in currently it is buzz in the market right now. So what these data warehouses do, it store that data and manage this data very effectively. And this integration allow for a unified view of the operation across the different departments. So in a data warehouse, right? So data is stored in a hierarchical way. So let's say for example, if you are aware of there is a concept called a data vault model. We also come across, I'll just give you the some hint how the data is there stored in the data warehouse. So basically it is stored in a hierarchical view. So let's suppose if I store in data vault, so we store the data in a uh, link, hub, and satellite, right? So satellite means Let's suppose I enter my name as a, one of the customer or as a citizenship of India, right? I just say, okay, this is my name, Rajiv, and my PIN number is so and so. So I can create what I can it create a satellite, right? Satellite I can create. So that means I just provide my PIN number and my Aadhaar number. Now tomorrow is government of India is introducing some new some new ID, right? It remove all your PAN card number, kind of a social security number they introduce. So what I did, I also created another satellite. So that means it has stored the context information, and the link is used to linking between the satellite and the hubs. So hub is where my key information is there. That means hub, you can say in a layman term, is a master where I can link with my satellite information. So in satellite, I can create a n number of satellites. So this is one of the data vault modeling, but we will explain later in going in depth of how the data is get stored in the data warehouse. But for now, you just think about it. In data warehousing, the data is get stored in a hierarchy. It should not be like a database where you have a simple column and row format, but it should be a stored in a hierarchical way. But then after it that now what Amazon will be do is route the calculation. That means it did the data analysis. So BI tool like in Amazon is a click quick sites, a click site that are used to analyze the data. So click site provide the interactive dashboard and reports that help the warehouse manager to monitor the key information indicator, that is you can say KPIs such as order processing time, inventory turnover rates, shipping accuracy. This analyze the identify the trends and the area of improvement. And finally it has a visualize. So it analyze the data in visualize using a dashboard and reports. For example, in Amazon, the click site can create a visualize that can show the real-time inventory label, order status, shipping routes, and these visualize makes it easier for manager, or your supervisor or leadership to understand the complex data and make a informed decision or take a decision very quickly. Then it also has real-time data. So Amazon BI system also provide the real-time updates on data warehouse operation. For instance, if there are any delay in a shipping process, right? And the system can alert the manager immediately. This allow to take a corrective system action, so such as rerouting the shipment or reallocating the resources. And finally there's a decision support. That means it takes the some decision out of it. So this is what BI is and what is the need of a BI. So you can think about it like that. Whenever you order any item from the Amazon or Flipkart, it should the nearby data warehouse, right? Nearby warehouse, it's not I'm saying data warehouse, it's a warehouse that it get delivered to you. So this warehouse is keep track of the each information. So far so good.
Rajiv, you said that, Rajneesh here, you said that in BI we need to store the data in the hierarchical way rather than the typical rows and columns.
Not, yeah, in data warehouse we store the data in a hierarchy way.
Like, I was just curious that what exactly, what do we mean by the hierarchical way?
Okay, so hierarchy way means it could be what modeling technique you can use. So let's say for example I use basically I work with a data vault modeling technique, right? So in data vault modeling technique you have a satellite links and hub, right? You cannot be a store one data at a one places. So let's say, for example, hub is a place where I can, store the information about myself. Let's say, about if I have this mobile, right? I bought some mobile, or I can say, no, example is, let's say my name, right? I store my name, but I have some other information, right? Let's say I have my PAN card number, I have my Aadhaar card number, I have my license. So those details are not, I'm not going to be stored in a hub. These information I should be stored in a satellite. And if tomorrow I can come, more information is come related to my identity, then I can create another satellite and I can link the satellite with the hubs. So the linking part, right? So link is basically your business keys get stored. And basically in data warehouse, it store your historical data. So in real world, what did happen, uh, when you do, predict and do your analysis, it should not be or with your current data. You need the data for your historical data. It depend upon the company. Let's say, for example, I work on a banking vertical. So in some cases, in European, they want, okay, I give me the data for the small retail banks, so that I can predict my analysis. So somebody can ask me that, give me the 12-month history data. It means that they need 11 months historical data, that means old data, and 1 month's current data, so they can predict some kind of analysis on these data. So I'm not going to, store data. It should be going to be stored in a some data warehouse, and it should be stored somewhere on a hierarchical way. I can store it in satellite links and hum. And when somebody has query it, I link all those things in all those satellite links and hub. Whenever I can fire a query, then it link satellite hub and links, and give me the result to the user. So this is the concept of a data warehouse. It's stored in a hierarchical way. We will see later in the diagram how, in the maybe upcoming. But just for now, you can just take a note of it, that it's not like, the relational database is data get stored in a column and row and column format. It should be stored in a hierarchical way. And what modeling technique you can use, that is also important.
So,
What
sorry, just a quick question on this. I know you said that we'll be talking in details further in the further classes, but row and column format is it how the data is structured within a specific entity,
Yes, this is a, yeah.
and
Well,
when
you
you're saying
say row
and
and
when
column
you're
is
saying
structured data.
yeah, and when you're exactly, and when you're saying that it would be stored in the hierarchical structure, you mean how the entities would be related, right?
Yes,
So one
entities.
is how the data is stored within an entity, and second point is how the entities would be related, right?
Yes, yes,
So how the data is stored in entity is still going to be stored in a row column structure. However,
yes, yes.
how the entities would be related, it is basically the hierarchical way you are saying, right? So
Hierarchical way.
basically, I was confused with the statement that it won't be stored in the row and
No, no,
column
no. It
format.
should be stored in a row and column there, but yeah, it depend upon also, right? It depend upon also, if you have using the NoSQL, then something different. It should not be stored in a row and column,
Of course,
right?
that is separate story. Yeah, of course,
Yeah.
we'll talk about it. But comparison of
Yes.
row column versus hierarchical structure was bit confusing. Okay, but yeah, thank you.
Any other question for anyone?
No, Rajni.
No.
Go ahead. No,
Okay.
sir, go ahead.
Okay. So let understand, this is data warehouse. What how the data is coming to the data warehouse. So basically, as I mentioned, just I relate my previous statement. Uh, so data warehouse means is a huge amount of data. The volume of data is quite huge. That means data warehouse is a store the historical data. As I mentioned, in my in banking vertical, which I work on corporate and retail banking and mortgage loans. So sometime I need the requirement to give me the data for last 12 months. Sometime I give me the data for last 25 months. And I remember sometime also I work with give me the data for last 20 years. So this is the data warehouse is stored the historical data. So if you can read how data is get stored uh, over here. So first let's look into the figure, which means that on the left hand side is your data source, right? Data source could be your operational system, your could be your ERP system. In ERP system it should be your Oracle ERP, or it should be your SAP, or it should be your SAP HANA, it should be your Microsoft Accepta ERP. CRM tool is Oracle CRM, or Salesforce CRM, or you have a relational database, right? Sometime some data, let's suppose you have some front end application, and front end application has stored the data on a SQL DB or Oracle DB, right? It should be your Oracle. And then you have some data on a flat file, a spreadsheet. Sometime could be your data should be your XML. Sometime your data should be your JSON. Sometime it's real to be your streaming data, real time data. There are different the data sources. And it also sometimes it happens, sometimes the data should be your on premises, right? Data should be your something with your on premises, then you can extract that data. So what it happened, so first of all, if you see, these are my source system. So this is my, that means data is coming from these 5 system: operation system, ERP, CRM, SQL, and the flat files. And what I do, I just extract this data from here one to my data warehouse. Suppose I store it in a raw. So basically it it collect the data, right? And we I need to collect this data from here to here, moving their data logistic from here to here, from ERP system to here, from CRM system to here, and from SQL to here, and then from flat file to here. So sometime it requirement is coming, okay, sometime company I say just extract the data first and store it over here as is. So as this means if it is a 1 over here, I want to store the same value 1 over here. So this is the what, but sometime it requirement is that mean you need to perform some kind of cleaning the data. Some it is a requirement, but not going to that. Let us understand what it happened. So if you have a multiple source system on the left hand side, what we will do, we will first extract this data into the and store it into a raw means it depend upon there are some different concept. There's a famous question in medallion architecture. We have a 3 layers, right? We are storing a raw, or you can say bronze, silver, or gold layer, right? So here in data warehouse is called as a raw data. So we use some kind of a ETL tool to extract this data. That means this ETL can connect with this system. uh, let's say if you can work with Azure cloud, there we have a data factory. So data factory have multiple connectors. So that connectors will be help you to connect with this system, operational ERP or CRM or SQL system, and extract this data. So when you extract this data, there are couple of things that might we perform. Let's say we perform the data validation. We also perform, if you require some kind of a cleaning data. Let's say you don't in operational system or ERP system, you have a customer data, and you want only those customer record where a telephone number or mobile phone number is not null. Some kind of validation you want to put. I don't want, if I can extract this data, there is no meaning for me. So that's the reason now we can clean this data. Cleaning means you can some of the cleaning in Azure ETL can support, right? And if you have a complex manipulation of that data, So we did not perform on the data factory or ETL tool, because that did come to your PySpark where we can clean this data. But a small amount, what I am saying, try to say over here is that a small amount of data cleansing you can perform in a ETL tool in EDF. Also, Glue can also support a small kind of a cleaning. I don't have much experience on the Glue, because I very less work with the Glue. So I mostly have a subject matter expert on EDF and other ETL tool. But Glue I hardly work with once in my career. Then we can transform these data, we can aggregate this data, and finally we can load this data into our data warehouse. So once I load this data over here, then it can store in a data mart. So data mart means, as I mentioned, so I in my current project, we use the data vault modeling, or I can use store this data into the three layers. As I mentioned, if I handle the medallion architecture, right, I can divide this data into the three layers. It's a staging, somebody called a staging layer, where I can keep the raw data. That means as is data. If it is a one value is coming, same I can store over here. Then we have a what we did, we can refine this data. So after this data is coming, I want to some kind of a data cleaning I can perform in my in my my refined layer, or sometime it is somebody has called is a silver layer. And then finally I can store in my gold layer. Gold layer is something sometime in big data it is called a produce layer, right? So this is, and then finally once it is consumed, that means it is ready for the my some different team, or some different parties who can consume this data. And this data is a completely refined data. Or I can say, if you relate, if you work with data engineer or data scientist, so data scientist will be calm over here, and it can take this data from this clean data. They will never is to take this data, raw data. They will always ask, give me the clean data, so that I can apply some kind of algorithm, and I can build some kind of analytics on top of it. So this is the concept of data warehousing, how the data is get stored in a data warehousing. And data is arranged into a hierarchical group, and often called it as that often called into a dimension and the fact, an aggregated fact. And then from there data is presented to a clear format, where filtering your slicing or dicing capabilities with the reports, multi-dimensional database, added sources for data mining activity, so that whoever look into the information can easily draw some conclusion about the business process, and ultimately make some decision. So this is where it is come your BI result, your visualization report, the dashboard, analysis come into the picture at after this third layer. So this is very important to understand. And this is also you can relate when you work with in your real time project. This is basically how it is work in the data engineering. So you have on the left hand side, it's you have multiple data sources. Then the sources should be your cloud, sometime cloud to cloud movement. Sometimes it should be your on premises, where you can just connect the data. So when you come with the on premises, there are connectors are available in ADF. If it is not, then you have to be think about how you can extract that data. Or sometimes you can both the parties will be agree and to transfer them data. But mostly 99.99 connectors are available in Azure to extract this data. Because I remember I can work with the big data. I migrated the Hive, HBase, Oracle, SAP HANA, Oracle. So these kind of, I'd already migrated, and these all connectors are available in Azure cloud. So it is very easy to work as a ETL and set this data. But you should be the security wise, right? When you move the data, so you need to maintain your security as well. So this is something different we can look into in the Azure part. So any question on this particular the concept of data warehousing? This is the basic architecture or the fundamentals architecture of the data warehousing.
Yeah. So thanks for explaining this diagram. So Rajiv was curious that how we have heard about ELT as well. So within this data flow diagram,
Yeah,
where ELT would be can be placed over here. Yeah.
yeah. So ELT, come see. Let me explain you over here. So let's suppose this is by one of my source system, right? This is my HR data, and let's say this is my sales data. Sales data. And let's say I can also mention, for your information, this is the data. This is, let's say, for example, this is in cloud. It should be in S3 bucket. Let's say it is S3 bucket, right? It is stored in the S3. And let's say this sales data, it is stored in somewhere in my company server, on-premises server. Let's say on-prem. Let's say on-prem, on-premises, my company server. So this is the two is my source system as of now. Let not make it more complicated. So, and this is my, let's suppose, yeah, this is my data warehouse, right? So this is my data warehouse. I need to come store, extract this data and store it in my data warehouse, both this data. So what I need to do first, if I need to collect, so there are, let's suppose in HR, there are multiple schema is there, right? In database, you have by default, if you work with SQL server, by default it is a DBO, right? It could, you can create your custom schema as well, right? Custom schema. So let's suppose, not to make this complicated, let's suppose I want to extract this data. One minute, I'm getting call from my wife. 1 minute. Hello. Sorry. Yeah. So let's suppose I have a DBO schema where I have some five table. Let's say five table where I have HR. Five table is related to HR, right? And cells. Let's say cells. Uh, Sorry. Let's say cells. So let's say them some different schema. Let's say it should be ABC schema, right? ABC is a schema. So there I have some six table. So this six table data I want to extract into store into the warehouse. So how I can do that? there should be some kind of a tool is available, right? How I can extract this data in cloud, in Azure. So this is where your ETL will be come into the picture. So this is earlier it is called ELT, your extract, transfer, and load. And now when it is come to MPP, that is massive parallel processing, this is changed to extract, load, and transform. Nowadays it is called ELT. So in how I can do that, there is a called a ADF, Azure Data Factory. In Azure Data Factory, I can connect with this HR system. That means HR is the S3. That means this is my data store. So I connect with this S3 bucket. How I can connect? The question is, right? I can. There is in Azure, there are three integration runtime is there. We will see there's a three integration runtime. So it tell you what is your source system. So I know S3 is my Azure, so it should be in a cloud platform. Somewhere it is some different cloud. So I can use Azure automation integration runtime. So this is the integration runtime. 1 minute. Sorry, my wife is in India, so she just called me. Sorry, hello.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, right. My my wife is in India and she just called me, so I need to.
No problem, sir. You can go ahead.
Okay, so uh, where I am, yeah. So yeah, so I'm mentioning that's the ETL tool, right? In ADF. So in ADF, you have a called a integration runtime. So integration runtime where you can think, okay, my source system where the data is, reside. Basically, if I say S3, I know that it's a cloud. So you have to be think, okay, three out of three integration runtime, it's Azure integration runtime is capable of connecting with the any cloud data store. So I can use that one to connect with the S3 bucket. And let's suppose I mention my sales data. So let's suppose sales data it is on your local computer or your company server. So how can I can use that? And it depend upon what is the database. Let's suppose a SQL database, or it's Oracle database, or it's a SAP HANA. So these connectors are there. Let's suppose if connectors are not available, right? There are certain very few, less scenarios. Sometimes connectors are not available. At that time there is called a custom activity in ADF. So you can write your own code either in the Python, or to extract these data. If only the connectors are not available, but 99.9 and all the database or relation, no SQL or no SQL, all the connectors are available in the ADF. So you can just design your pipeline and do that. Now I'm saying to on-premises data, right? So on-premises data, that is called a SHIR, that is called a self-hosted integration runtime. So this is used in ADF to extract any of the on-premises data and extract into your pull it into the data warehouse or data, or I can say into your in Azure it is called a ADLS, or it is a blob storage, whatever it is, right? Or it should be in your relational database. So this is the where ETL come into the picture, what I'm trying to say. So in between in ETL, you design your pipeline, connect with this HR system. At the same time, if you want in the same pipeline, you can also connect with the sales data with your on-premises with ABC schema, and you can extract these data. And what is the load type, right? Sometimes, initially when you start, it should be a full load, right? That means what is the data, whatever the number of row are available in your table. Let's say 100 rows are available in all the 5 table. That is the validation I can check. I can check my reconciliation. Okay, when I extract these data from the HR system, all the 100 rows are there or not. So this is one of the input data validation we can consider. Or this is a kind of a data quality checks we can also considering. That is a basic checks that you need to be performed. If I have some 100 records, and out of 100 records only 90 is coming, that means I cannot be consider those 90s. So this is in the slide I mentioning, thus input validation in this one. So this is the way where you can also perform some kind of a input validation in the ETL, right? And a second point I mentioned, data cleaning, right? Data cleansing. So you have, let's suppose HR data, and you need to do some kind of a promotion, and you need only those customer or those employee data where it has a mobile number. If somebody has not provided the mobile number, I don't need it because I cannot be speak to that person. So where you can just filter out. So at that time, you can also perform some kind of a data cleaning in the ETL pipeline as well, or Azure pipeline is as well. So this is something scenario. This is some scenario is company has defined in the kind of a business rules. This is called a business rule to when you extract this data. But meaning over there is that you can use ETL if you work with Azure. If you work with AWS, it should be Glue. It should be, if you work with GCP, there's called a BigQuery. And if you all, and this is called Talent also, you able to connect with these source system and extract this data. So which ETL tool you can use, they're capable of it. Or I can say my volume of data is so much used, right? Let's suppose I work with, it is also recommended that if I come touch this one. So I just, I was, working with one of the utility domain. So there's a oil and gas. So it has required some kind of a GPS data, right? And GPS data or data from a series. So what happened is that, when the ship was moving with the crude oil, right? They want every point when ship is moving, they send some data in a sensor. So I need to store these data, so I can track the movement of the ship and how long the ship will be stay for refueling the fuel. So that is also, I don't need this data. If ship is not running, I don't need this data. So my data is so much use, it is more than enough, more than 4 TB of data. So at that time I cannot be use the ETL tool, because ETL will be only work when you have a less than 4 TB of data. If you have more than 4 TB of data, it is not recommended to use as per the Microsoft guidelines as the ETL tool. At that time, you have to be use the Databricks, because it is work on a distributed processing. So I can connect with JDBC connection with these data, or with the sales data to extract this information. So over here, sometime I in the company use ETL. So 80% sometimes use ETL, and sometimes 20% I would say, depending upon the size of the data or volume of the data. Over here, you can also use Databricks to extract this data from here and extract into the your data warehouse. And here some companies are using, how you can store your data. That means somebody can store in your ADLS. Some company store in a blob storage. When it is stored in a ADLS, or blob storage, right? Then again, it can create your architecture. There are multiple architecture is company are following these days. The earlier it was started with a medallion, which I just explained. It should be a 3 layer, bronze, silver, and gold layer, or sometimes it is called as a raw, refined, or produced layer. It just design your architecture. And then sometime, if you work with the real-time data, there is called a kappa architecture. Somebody use called microservices architecture as well. But in data engineering, mostly you can hear about the medallion architecture, or you also hear a few times when you have a real-time streaming, then you can use a kappa architecture. So this meaning that ETL will be over here, you can use to extract this data in data warehouse, or you can use PySpark as well, or I can say Databricks as well. Any question?
No, so just to double click. So I am coming back to the ETL versus ELT. So you said that in ETL, we first would be extracting this HR data, sales data, would be doing all these transformations and validations, and then would be loading into data warehouse. This is ETL, right? Now again, like just if we stick to this point, extract the data from HR sales and load it into the warehouse, and before that we just massage the data. This is ETL. What is ELT in comparison to this? Just
Okay.
on the, yeah.
So ELT, that means I can first extract this data and load this data. And transformation I can do over here.
We can't see, basically I can't see, at least use, okay. In the warehouse only we'll be massaging the data, but
Yes.
first of all we'll be loading the data, yeah, right?
Yes. So
what yeah, what is the benefit of ELT versus ETL then? Ideally we should always go to ETL rather than ELT.
because earlier, in the so first when I started working with in a big data, so this is a classical way to doing the ETL. First, you need to extract it, and then you can transform it, and then you have a load it. The reason why earlier we don't have much volume of huge amount of data, right? As the day by day, you have so many, the size of the data is keep increasing, right? So it is always better you can extract this data first, you can load this data, because the loading of the data, as I see that I work with a company, right, where I work with a Chevron corporation, where it need the data to track the movement of the ship, right? And it give me the data sending on a sensor. That's called A3 tool. A3 tool is sending me the data. So I load this data and then I apply my transformation. So because my volume of the data is very huge, if I can extract it, then I can transform it, and then I load it, it become too much for me. That is sometime you can pay more, because whenever your data is volume is more, you need to give more compute power. So that is the reason ELT has come into the picture. You extract it, load it, and then you can write your kind of a transformation. You can do the data massaging after that. So this is what company has following ELT in these days, because the data is so many, right? If you can see, we have a data for social media. How many, if you can take your mobile, right? So what are the site you browse up per day? So it should be quite huge then. That's the reason we in industry we use ELT.
Rajiv, in ELT,
after load and if we transform data, then after where we will store the data, in data warehouse or other storage system?
It could be, it depend upon your requirement, right? So sometime, I work with the company. So basically, sometime I store in a data warehouse, but it depend upon your company. Data warehouse is nothing but you can think about it's a data store where you can store this data. So data store, it could be your ADLS is also your data store, and it is cheaper, right? It's a cheaper. Blob storage is also your data store. It is also a cheaper. Data warehouse, it's more costlier. It depends on which company will be able to afford it or not, and where data warehouse is really required or not. So in some cases, in some of the project, I stored this data there, and finally when I move this data, that means historical data. So what happened in the real world? So data warehousing, basically it is used to keep the historical data, as I mentioned earlier as well, right? So that means, let's suppose, let me give you my example how in my company it worked. So what happened? We did a monthly we did run the monthly batches, right? So my data, my source system is a SAP, or let's say HR data or as sales data. So I extract this data. It's a batch job. I extract this data, store it somewhere on my data store. So my data store is ADLS, or sometimes I use SQL DB, because it has only a current month data. Then I process this data, I transform this data. Then I call a one API. That means in India, right? If you took some kind of a home loan, so you get a CIBIL score. Similarly, in European country, what happened? Those who are taking the loan, they get some kind of a ratings. So I provided this data, says this HR data and sales data to the ECB. ECB is nothing but you can think it's a Reserve Bank of India. Reserve Bank of India. I provide this data to the Reserve Bank of India, and they can provide some kind of a rating. The SIGI provide the CIBIL score to each of them as a customer. So once I get this data, I can store the ratings data in my data warehouse. That is the 1 month data, but in the data warehouse, it also has my historical data as well. That means now this is a month of May, right? It also, I'm keeping the data for the April, for May. It depends upon the requirement. So if you store the data, very huge amount of data, then data warehouse is more suitable, I would say, to consider. Otherwise, company is not going to use the data warehouse because it is costly. Understand or not? Or I should give you some other example.
Rajiv,
So you can give in another example. You can. Thank you.
Okay. So
Rajiv, from my side, I have another question.
yeah.
Like data warehousing is a concept or a specific name of storage? I'm a bit confused. And data warehousing is a concept or storage name?
No, it's a concept. It's a concept.
So
So
where we will store
see,
data? Just if data
data,
warehouse.
say data warehouse is, or you can also store the data, right? So in data warehouse is a tool, like you can say it's a tool or it's a software, right? So how it work? It can collect this data, store this data, analyze that data, and you can also able to send you the consume the data. It's a tool. It's a software. It stores also the data in a hierarchical way, right? So if you can understand OLAP, and OLTP, this is a data warehouse and some the data warehouse, a relational database and the data warehouse.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay.
Sir,
So
can you explain the EDLS again?
ADLS.
Yes, sir.
So ADLS is a data store. Data store, that means it's Azure data lake, right? So in Azure data lake is a data store basically in Azure where you can store that data. So basically you can use these days, Delta Lake, where you can store this data into a multiple format. Like it should be currently, if you work with the Parquet format, CSV format, Avro, then ORC. So these are the formats, where you can store this data. So data is you can think about Azure data lake storage is a scalable, is a secure data lake solution for high performance analytics, and it is designed to handle the large volume of data, and it is integrated with any Azure services. The key benefit of in a technical, I can say, it's a scalability. You can handle the petabyte of data, and it is also a cheaper. And also the security, it provides you the enterprise's grade of security features. And you can integrate seamlessly with any Azure analytics services. Let's say, for example, Databricks. You can easily connect with Databricks, Azure Synapse Analytics, and it is very ideal for storing and analyzing the large data set. But it stores that data in a hierarchy, not in a like you can see in a structure way. If you store in a CSV, then it should be a structure way. But there are other format you can also store in the in the ADLS. It also support for your machine learning. So ADLS also support for machine learning models, and it also trained your data. So these are the key benefit of storing the data, and costly it is much cheaper than data warehousing. So this is also one of the very I can say face the multiple time the question, interview question. Now, what is the difference between ADLS, and why we not go for the why we use ADLS? Why not we use ADLS? Why we you go for the relational database? You can still go ahead. You can also store the data in the ADLS. Let's suppose I don't have a requirement to keep my historical data. I can also keep the historical data where you can just set the retention period. Right after 13 months, I don't want to keep this data. You can do that, but it is we are stored in a Parquet format. I can also use the data a delta table concept to store these data. I can also use see this data, and basically you can also get an external table from the ADLS to see the data. I can also write the query, like how you can fire the query, select asterisk from. Let's suppose I store my data in a ADLS. I can create an external table, and I can see still I can able to view this data, because Synapse is also providing you the capability, Synapse Analytics and the Fabric, to directly connect with your ADLS, and you can extract this data, and it will be treat you like as a table as well. So this is also in the industry. So Microsoft does bring this concept called Fabric to work with ADLS, and it will treat you like as a table only. But it should be your external table. It's not an internal table. Hope I can able to answer your question.
Rajiv, I have just one more question on ETL versus ELT. So, for example, somebody gives us a task of modeling a data warehouse, or this data engineering requirement. So, when we should go for an ETL versus when we should go for an ELT? because I mean, in ideal scenario, if we have to do ETL or ELT, in both the cases we will be able to suffice the requirement. But from the better design perspective, it is really very you know, it's really very important to understand like what will be those use cases where I should, you know, prepare an architecture based out of ETL, or I should go with an architecture that is based off ELT, because in most of the situation with all,
So they
yeah,
already give you this answer. So maybe you would not catch it. The most suitable, how you can pick this ETL and when you can pick this ELT, right? So ETL you can always, often used, as I mentioned, for a smaller or a structured data set. If your volume of data is less and it is in the structured format, then you can, go ahead with the ETL. While if you have a very large volume of data of or the unstructured data, then you can, go with the ELT.
ELT. Okay, so volume of data is one. Is there any other else criteria like that we can keep in
If you
mind?
have unstructured data,
Okay, if
okay,
unstructured data is there, then we have to go for ELT.
ELT.
Okay, okay, that answers.
Rajiv, in ELT we will use Databricks.
You can use both of them with the Databricks.
Okay.
Both of them you can use Databricks. But what I'm saying is that if you have a less than 4 TB of data, then Data Factory can cable to Azure Data Factory. Not I'm not particularly saying this tool Azure Data Factory is, as per the Microsoft written, 4 TB of data, less than 4 TB of data it can handle. It is on paper, right? If you have more than 4 TB of data, it is always preferred to use a Databricks, because in Data Factory, there are something introduced a concept by Microsoft called a data flow. So data flow is also running behind the scene on a Spark cluster. So when it has come to the Spark cluster, it behaves same way how your Databricks is working, but it cannot be give you the flexibility, So in that case, if you are paying same amount of money, it is better to use some Databricks. So if you can decide, which tool you, so the answer is, if you have a less than 4 TB of data, ADF can able to support. If you have more than 4 TB of data, then I would go for a Databricks.
Okay, and pandas is still used in data engineering, or like Spark replace pandas?
Yeah, you can also use pandas. You can import this pandas library into a Databricks, and you can start using the pandas as well. Sometimes I use also pandas, depending upon my transformation, what kind of a transformation I need to apply.
Okay, thanks.
But you can use the pandas as well, because I use that in multiple projects. Okay, I think I am want to wind up this session, because I'm also get tired and I'm getting some call from my home. Otherwise, too late in India, so I need to take some call before they get slept. So if you don't guys have any question, then we can see in next session, right? And maybe I can say the time slot is 9. It should be too late for you guys. Should be 1 hour before. It could be also better for me as well. But I can.
Yes.
Sir, could you please give us the notes as well?
Notes I will check, because I need to, because mostly I did in the slide. I didn't prepare any. Yeah, I don't have a time to prepare. Yeah, actually, I did.
Okay.
I didn't
If,
have
if
a time to prepare, because I have also I'm working on
If is it possible, then please.
Let me see, because I take multiple sessions, but I never give notes. This is because I'm giving the real how in work in an industry in the real time, data engineering, how it is working in industry. So I can give you more use cases, more real time project, which you can use day to day activity. Mostly 80 to 85% of your day to day activity will be touched in this in this uh, in this session.
So that will be more helpful, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay, then if you don't have any question, then we can wind up this session. Then thank you very much for your time and have a wonderful day.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
very
Very much.
Thank you so much.